Hello, and welcome to another midweek message. In recent weeks, we've seen our homes rise to places of prominence in our lives that perhaps they've not occupied for quite a while. We've seen kitchen tables become school classrooms. Spare bedrooms have been converted into home offices. Our kitchens are our new favorite restaurants. Our living rooms are our only local movie theaters. And for some of you men, your home has even become your neighborhood barbershop. Our homes are at the center of our lives during this pandemic, perhaps more than they ever have been before. But the truth of the matter is that it really never should have been otherwise. The home is God's first great institution. In Genesis chapter 2, after he created man, he saw that it was not good for Adam to be alone, and so he made for him a helpmeet, a helper suitable, comparable, and compatible with him. God caused a deep sleep to fall upon Adam. He took from his side a rib, and from that rib he fashioned a woman. He brought that woman to the man, and the two, man and woman, became husband and wife. The two became one flesh, intended by God to forsake their former household, father and mother, and be joined together in a new home. The home is designed and created by God himself. God's first great institution was not social or civic. It was not governmental or political. But God's first great institution was the domestic relationship, the domestic unit created by the marriage of one man and one woman. In Mark chapter 10, Jesus commented upon that divine arrangement. In Mark 10, beginning in verse 6, Jesus said, "From the beginning of creation, God made them male and female. For this reason, a man shall leave his father and mother, and the two shall become one flesh. So they are no longer two, but one flesh. What therefore God has joined together, let no man separate." God is the one who joins together man and woman, husband and wife in marriage. The home is designed and created by God. It's his first great institution, and it is mankind's second great responsibility. Our first great responsibility, of course, is to God himself, to make sure that we are in a right relationship with him. But the home is our second great responsibility, because in that home there is a marriage at its center that needs to be guarded. Jesus teaches us here in Mark chapter 10, and other passages echo this truth, that marriage is to be both exclusive and permanent. That is, it is the relationship of one man and one woman for a lifetime. It's not to be casually discarded when one falls out of love with another. It's not something that is to be tossed aside as disposable or temporary, but rather it is a relationship that God intends to bind together a husband and wife for the duration of their lives. There is a marriage relationship in our homes that needs to be guarded from those who would attempt to corrupt it by entering in another party, or by severing that relationship in a way with which God is not pleased. It's a great responsibility. It ought never be far from our minds, because there's a marriage that's to be guarded there. Secondly, it's a great responsibility because there are relationships in that home that need to be nurtured. In Ephesians chapter 5, beginning in verse 22, Paul said, "Wives, be subject to your own husbands as to the Lord." And in verse 25, he said, "Husbands, love your wives, just as Christ also loved the church." He concluded in verse 33 by saying, "Each among you is to love his own wife even as himself, And the wife must see to it that she respects her husband. In chapter 6, children are admonished, obey your parents in the Lord, and furthermore, honor your father and mother. There are relationships in the context of our home that need to be nurtured. That is, they don't necessarily come naturally. They don't just happen without deliberate purpose and intentional effort on our part. But rather, there's work for us to be done. For me to love my wife as Christ loved the church. For her to respect me and honor me as the church does the Lord. For children to love and obey and honor their parents as God's children are expected to love, honor, and obey Him. Those are relationships that need to be nurtured, that need to be given attention and not taken for granted. Third, there are duties in the context of our home that need to be fulfilled. Something as basic as the physical necessities of life. In 1 Timothy chapter 5 and verse 8, Paul said, if anyone does not provide for his own, and especially for those of his household, he's denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. That's a duty that needs to be fulfilled. We ought never lose sight of it. It can't be far from the center of our minds that I need to be providing for those who are part of my household, making sure that they have the fundamentals that they need. Furthermore, there is keeping and managing of the house that needs to be done. Paul spoke of that in 1 Timothy chapter 5 and verse 14, and again in Titus chapter 2 and verse 5. Looking well to the ways of the house, Proverbs chapter 31 and verse 27. That is, a home is not going to run smoothly, much less be everything that it ought to be, without it being given the kind of attention and care that it deserves. Finally, there are purposes that need to be fulfilled. For example, there's training and teaching that needs to be done. It's true that a local church that's organized and operating like God intends it to be can have a great impact on the spiritual education of children. But that responsibility can't be delegated to a local church or pawned off on some religious organization or school. The spiritual education of children is the responsibility of the home. God spoke of that regarding Abraham in Genesis chapter 18 when He said that He had chosen Abraham that he might teach his children in the ways of righteousness. We're admonished in Proverbs 22 to train up a child in the way he should go, to bring them up, Ephesians chapter 6 and verse 4, in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. There are duties that need to be fulfilled. There's training that needs to be done. You see, our homes have to be at the center of our lives. We can't become selfish, consumed only with our own individual well-being, the things that we want out of life. But there are responsibilities that we have to parents, to spouses, to children. There are responsibilities that we have to those who are members of our household, both immediate and extended, that we can't neglect. All right, so the scriptures don't say anything about our homes becoming our movie theaters or barber shops. But that doesn't mean they're not important. They are places of training, of relationship building, and relationships to be guarded and protected from our enemy Satan at every turn. Your home needs to be at the center of your life. It's the second great responsibility that you've been given by God Himself. And it's my second great responsibility too. We might learn some things during this pandemic. And one of them might just be how important our homes really are. Thanks for watching.